It's 5:05 and welcome into a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start with some news out of Washington, D.C. this morning as the 2025 legislative session gets underway in the nation's capital. The inauguration of the 47th President of the United States and Donald Trump happening on Monday. Two congressmen from North Carolina are already filing legislation that he says he would probably sign. Republican Mark Harris and David Rouzer, they serve both the 7th and 8th congressional district here in the state, will introduce on Wednesday the Lumbee Fairness Act, a bill granting full federal recognition and benefits to the North Carolina Native American Lumbee tribe. Harris said in a statement to Carolina Journal, quote, "For far too long, the Lumbee tribe has been wrongfully denied federal recognition. But now more than ever, we are closer to the goal. Last Congress, members across the aisle overwhelmingly supported giving full federal recognition and rights to the Lumbee tribe, and we can't lose that momentum now." If you'll remember back to just a couple of weeks ago during the closing days of the 118th Congress, an identical bill did pass the House of Representatives, and it did have very strong bipartisan support, 311 to 96. Congressman David Rouzer said in a statement to Carolina Journal, quote, "The federal government has denied generations of Lumbee tribe members the full recognition and tribal sovereignty granted to other federally recognized tribes. The Lumbee Fairness Act corrects the wrongs written in statute during the Indian Termination Act era and restores the rightful benefits and services that the Lumbee tribe has long refused. This legislation has received broad bipartisan support during the past Congress, a symbol of understanding and support for the sovereignty of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina." Harris, a new addition to the House Republican caucus, joined him in reintroducing the bill earlier this week. The Lumbee tribe primarily resides within the 7th Congressional District, which Harris was elected to represent. He joins veteran lawmaker David Rouzer, whose district also includes Lumbee interests, and reintroduced the bill following supportive comments from President Trump on the campaign trail last fall. During a rally in September of 2024, the former and incoming president said, quote, that he would sign legislation granting the Great Lumbee tribe federal recognition that it deserves. The act would give that full federal recognition to the tribe, which means full federal services and benefits for members across Robeson, Cumberland, Hoke, and Scotland counties. Practically, the benefits include access to health care through the Indian Health Service, as well as the eligibility for various federal funding programs for housing, education, and economic development. In Robeson County, where the Lumbee tribe is centered, is one of the poorest in the states in terms of economic feasibility. At a 27.7% in 2023, its poverty rate is more than double the average of North Carolina and the nation. The median household in Robeson County in 2023 was $40,000. NC Representative Jared Lowry from Robeson County, who is a member of the Lumbee tribe as well as a Marine Corps veteran, previously told the Carolina Journal he was very appreciative of the support from President Trump. He said, "I'm glad President Trump supports full federal recognition for the Lumbee people. He understands that ending the nearly 70-year termination policy that Congress put on the Lumbee tribe will finally conclude a 130-year journey for justice that has been sought by the Lumbee people. Full federal recognition is about fairness and increased economic opportunity that will be a huge economic impact for southeastern North Carolina." We will keep an eye on this. That bill was introduced on Wednesday. Of course, Trump is sworn in on Monday, and things are expected to get off to a pretty quick start. We'll keep an eye on it, and as soon as that advances through the House, it will, of course, have to make its way to the Senate and then to the president's desk for a signature. We'll be tracking that right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:09, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Over the past few months, we have kept a very close eye on ongoings out in western North Carolina. That area still ravaged in dealing with the impacts from Hurricane Helene, which affected that area back in September of last year. there has been an incredible amount of scrutiny placed on the federal government, specifically FEMA, and there's this back and forth between hotel vouchers, people not knowing whether they can or can't stay. It's a real mess. To try and explain it and get some more details this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Teresa Opeka over at CarolinaJournal.com to the NewsHour this morning. Teresa, these people have been through so much over the last couple of months. FEMA cannot seem to wrap their head around the fact that these people need temporary housing. What is the latest that you're following this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Nick. Yeah, words don't begin to describe what these people have been through, right? So they've been granted different time frames of being able to stay, hotel vouchers, if you will, hotel motel vouchers, staying in temporary housing while their housing. They get temporary housing. And obviously, I don't think their houses are going to be fixed right back to where they were before the hurricane, but some semblance where they can actually live. So there was some controversy last week where we were having a snowstorm coming in about this time last week, that they're going to be getting kicked out of hotels. Then they said, no, we'll extend it. I think it was January 11th. So that was going to be Saturday. We'll extend it to the 14th on Tuesday, which was Tuesday. Okay. So they extended it to the 14th and said, well, okay, no, actually now we're going to extend it probably to the 25th, January 25th. So great. You're not knowing where you're going to be for a couple, you're wondering, geez, are they extending it, not extending it? So they extended to the 25th, but on the 14th, actually, hotels were getting notified that they needed to start kicking people out. And then in turn, residents were all these people were saying, hey, you got to leave. You got to go. And it's like, what do you mean you got to go? We're here till the 25th. Nope. Got notice that you need to go. So that caused quite an uproar with all U.S. Senator Ted Budd and Tom Tillis. They were getting notified, that, hey, we're being told that we're going to get kicked out of the hotels after being told that you could stay till January 25th. It was just a nightmare. And also, too, there were other nonprofits helping out. Glenn Beck's charity, Mercury One, was helping put people up and extending their hotel stays. And then FEMA came back and said, oh, well, we're sorry. Or like we were talking about this before. How do you know, 7:00 that night, you're getting kicked out? You don't know where you're going. Are you going to sleep in your car? Are you going to sleep outside? That's not a way for anybody to live.
Well, and I guess the point to really prove here, these people are not willingly and excited in all likelihood to be staying in a hotel room for months on end. They want to be back in their homes. They want to be back in their communities. Unfortunately, they can't due to the devastation of Helene. And FEMA just seemingly keeps juggling the ball here. And there's a lot of questions as to, as you just noted, when is this cutoff date going to be? Continued misinformation. Teresa, this has been literally going on since day one. We're talking about 3 months now since this storm, 4 months now, since this storm affected our state. And FEMA continues to still drop the ball. It's pretty almost unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It's just like put a long-term extension in for these folks and say, okay, until June or whatever. Because, things do take time. And with the government, we all know the government doesn't work exactly that fast and speedy. So put a longer range extension in for these people. It's like, oh, they're doing it by piecemeal. Well, here, every couple days, we'll give you this extension. We even had Congressman Chuck Edwards, who that's his area, up in North Carolina. He said on a news program, News Nation, the other night that, hey, you know what? As soon as the new administration, Trump administration, takes over, FEMA needs to be revamped, period, and get a new administrator. Deanne Criswell is the current administrator. She has not done such a great job. At least that's my opinion. I think that's opinions of a lot of different people. And she needs to go. And really, a lot of these agencies, not just FEMA, but we're talking FEMA here, do need to be revamped and restructured into something that's going to actually help people and not cause more headaches and heartache for people who've gone through so much already, losing their homes and their livelihoods and just not knowing what's next. You just want some semblance and peace of mind. And that's not what's happening here.
Well, and to compound and make this even worse, it was back about a week and a half ago that we started tracking wildfires out in the LA area. You now have thousands upon thousands of structures devastated in portions of Southern California, dozens of people dead. I mean, Teresa, not only has FEMA mismanaged the situation in Western North Carolina, they've had months to try and get ahead of this. You now add on tens of thousands of people in California that need assistance. You wonder how this administration and this agency is going to help these people at all if they've botched Western North Carolina as poorly as they have.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you can kind of, just talking about how they're going to help them. They're not helping people in Western North Carolina. It's just like Encore for North Carolina, not helping people, Hurricane Matthew and Florence victims. How are they going to help? So, anybody out in Western North Carolina, which we see Governor Stein did put a new agency in effect for that. It's just like saying, how's this? If you're not doing a great job right now, and you haven't done a great job in a long time, how are you going to help these other people? Or even going back to, say, the Maui wildfires. I think I covered a hearing a month or so ago where Chris Well was testifying, and they said, I think one house, maybe two house, it was a very small number of houses that were actually rebuilt. And that's over a year and a half ago that they had those fires. So just not good. Hopefully things do get straightened out now with the new administration coming into office.
We'll continue the conversation coming up after this with Teresa Opeka from the Carolina Journal. It's now 5:16, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get a look at traffic on this Friday morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
your emergency situation station.
Good morning again. It's 5:20. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Streaming live on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel this morning. You can also download the show via podcast. If 5 o'clock is a little too early in the morning for you to start your day, I get it. Completely with you on that. Check out the podcast. It's available wherever you get your shows. Just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour, tap the subscribe or follow button, and you'll get a new show delivered to your smartphone or tablet each and every weekday morning. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. Happening a little bit later today over at Western Carolina University, a hearing will be taking place concerning a Title IX proceeding that has been filed against student Peyton McNabb, who is and attends WCU. McNabb was accused of a harassment violation of Title IX under university policy after she filmed her confrontation with what she believed to be a biological male in a woman's bathroom at WCU back in May. It's important to note that this is not a lawsuit filed in a court of law, but instead an internal WCU proceeding. She posted this video back on her X account in May of last year, and on May 3rd, the day after the incident, McNabb posted that she had been reported to the school for alleged transphobia and harassment. She told a spokesperson from WCU told Fox News Digital the day after the incident, quote, Western Carolina University is dedicated to fostering a safe and welcoming environment for all students. The university's primary concern is the safety and well-being of all members of its campus community. WCU is committed to upholding its principles and ensuring that all students have equal access to education and opportunities. Violations of any university policy or state and federal law will be addressed by appropriate campus officials. Unlawful discrimination against any member of our campus community is not accepted at WCU. Peyton has been accused of violating University Policy 129, which prohibits discrimination and harassment based on sexual orientation under Title IX. The university policy it very clearly claims that, saying Western Carolina University does not discriminate on the basis of sex and prohibits sex discrimination in any educational program or activity that it operates as required by Title IX and its regulations. Peyton McNabb has been in the news before. In 2022. At the age of just 17, she was severely injured in a volleyball match in which she was struck in the face by a volleyball that was spiked by a transgender athlete on an opposing team. McNabb's injury in 2022 opened the door for her to share her story with North Carolina lawmakers. That ultimately led to the passage of H.R. 574, which is the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. That bill became law following a veto override in August of 2023. Tammy Fitzgerald, who is the executive director of the NC Values Coalition, told CarolinaJournal.com, it's ironic that a policy passed 50 years ago to protect women from discrimination is being used today on a North Carolina University campus to allow males to discriminate against a woman who has every right to privacy in the woman's bathroom on a public university campus. A couple of weeks ago, U.S. District Judge Danny Reeves in the Eastern District of Kentucky struck down a Biden administration's rule change that would add sexual orientation and gender identity to Title IX protections against discrimination in federally funded schools. Reeves wrote that opinion. McNabb's hearing also comes just days after the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. That was H.R. 28, which was passed in the 119th Congress earlier this week by a vote of 218 to 206, with two Democrats voting in favor of the bill and North Carolina Congressman Don Davis, also a Democrat, voting present, so not giving his opinion one way or the other. That will be taking place again today over at WCU. I'll note Not a lawsuit, not an official legal proceeding or criminal proceeding, but it is something internally going on at WCU. As we get details, we'll pass them along to you right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:25, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Continuing our conversation this morning with Teresa Opeka from CarolinaJournal.com about FEMA and some of their issues and issues that are still being faced in Western North Carolina. Over on your article at CarolinaJournal.com, Josh Stein has not necessarily been out of the fray with this. You mentioned his new group, Grow NC, still waiting to see some of the practicalities of what exactly that group is going to do. Stein got blown up on social media earlier this week due to a picture of him having barbecue with somebody. What was going on there?
Yeah, so he was in Canton visiting. There's a new owner of the paper mill in Canton, which is some good news. That's a really good thing. But he met with some officials, including the mayor of Canton, Zeb Smathers, and had the picture up, the photo up, the selfie taken of him having some barbecue at lunch that day. And this was the same day, this Tuesday, the 14th, that all these people were getting kicked out of the hotel rooms. And there was no mention of that at all on any of his social media, no press releases, nothing was being talked about. So it was like kind of a little tone deaf. Like, yeah, you're talking about Canton's paper mill, but how about the people being kicked out of the hotel rooms? No, there was just nothing mentioned.
As we, over the next couple of days, of course, coming up here on Monday, there will be a new administration in there. You mentioned some of what Chuck Edwards said. And while I think, if you asked Trump or his supporters, they would say, yes, we want to revamp these agencies. But Teresa, let's look at this practically. You've been in the political game a long time. That stuff takes a lot of time. In the meantime, these people still need help. They can't wait 16, 18 months for an agency to get completely gutted and rebuilt. They need answers literally yesterday for some of the things that they're dealing with. You just wonder what that immediate response is going to look like at the federal level.
Oh, absolutely. You do. I mean, the private sector, the nonprofits, you got Samaritan's Purse, mentioned Mercury One before, they've been more of a help than the federal government or even the state government coming in. And thank God for those people. And for everyday people donating $25, $10 here, whatever, it all makes a difference for these people. And I think we're going to have to rely a lot on that in the beginning. Hopefully something will get up to speed with the Trump administration. But as you mentioned, the people do not have half a year or a year and a half or whatever the time frame to wait. They need help right now.
Turning our attention back to North Carolina for a second here, the General Assembly is set to be back in Raleigh coming up here in a couple of weeks, or right at the end of the month. Presumably this is going to be something, at least we've heard some maybe through the grapevines, that they're going to be dealing with hurricane relief, potentially another round of that almost as soon as they get back in. Assess that for us.
Sure. So there's also a new committee, new House Speaker Destin Hall created a new committee that's going to take a look at all of that, see where that's going to go. And I believe Representative John Bell, who was instrumental on the subcommittee hearings for NCORE, he's part of that committee. So they're going to be taking a hard look at how things are going to be administered and watching that. And also we've got State Auditor Dave Bullock, who said he's also going to be watching how things are going to be spent when it comes to hurricane relief. He's been very vocal about that when he's talked about that in news reports. So hopefully they'll have a better eye on all of this versus like what the state's endured with NCORE the last few years. Watching those hearings was just the same thing all the time. It's like, so, but meanwhile, you've got people. Let's not forget, as we mentioned, Hurricane Matthew in Florence. There's people who still don't have homes, and they're in hotel rooms years later, not months, years. It's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable, and it's a really sad situation all across the board. Teresa, there's some additional details, including some of these videos and posts from various lawmakers. Where do folks check that out this morning?
They can go to CarolinaJournal.com. They can also go to our Facebook page, Instagram, also X, formerly known as Twitter. And also you can check out our weekly show, The Debrief. It's coming out on every Thursday on YouTube. So there's lots of places where you can find out all this information.
Teresa Opeka joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get another look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon. It's 5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. As we continue to track news across the state of North Carolina this morning, we do have some, I guess we'll call it some new information, some breaking news out of the Charlotte area this morning. However, it does deal with North Carolina Governor Josh Stein. He announced his 8th executive order in Charlotte yesterday that focuses on abortion access and birth control. According to the executive order, it directs cabinet agencies within his administration to, quote, safeguard medical privacy, ensure women receive accurate information about their pregnancies, and protect doctors providing lawful reproductive health care, end quote. That's right from the press release and the executive order. Stein said yesterday, our state has seen alarming attacks on women's reproductive rights over the past few years, and I remain committed to doing everything in my power to protect women's freedoms and their privacy. Stein, a Democrat, said, I am directing my cabinet agencies to take specific actions to protect women and healthcare providers from extreme anti-reproductive freedom laws. Stein has been a strong proponent of abortion and a woman's right to choose in the state. That's one thing he has been consistent on through his campaign and various legal cases. One an example against North Carolina's restrictions on the abortion drug mifepristone. That in new court filings, which he restated last month when he was still the AG, Stein is the lead defendant in a UNC Health doctor lawsuit challenging state restrictions. Dr. Amy Bryant as plaintiff and Stein as a defendant urged the Fourth Circuit to overrule all state restrictions on the drug. GOP lawmakers have intervened in the case and want to see all state mifepristone restrictions upheld. Stein has been vocal about stating that he would not defend the new abortion law passed by the Republican General Assembly, which took effect in July of 2023. It reduces the time allowed for abortions in the state from 20 weeks to 12 weeks. And this has been something that Stein has been very much and adamantly against, even though it has been the state law since July of 2023. Stein's executive order has the following provisions. It directs cabinet agencies to pursue opportunities to protect medical professionals providing lawful reproductive health care services and patients obtaining lawful reproductive health care in North Carolina. Number 2, it directs cabinet agencies not to cooperate with efforts to impose penalties, including investigation or prosecution, on medical professionals providing lawful reproductive health care services or patients obtaining lawful reproductive health care. 3, it directs those same agencies to protect women's medical privacy by reviewing and, if necessary, revising policies about the records and data they collect related to a woman's reproductive health care. Number 4, it directs the Department of Health and Human Services to provide information about the differences between healthcare providers and other entities that offer services to pregnant women, including differences in available services and applicable patient privacy laws. And finally, it directs DHHS to take appropriate and feasible measures to ensure North Carolinians have reliable, consistent access to safe and legal reproductive health care medications and birth control. There is really not any indication from the General Assembly that they are set to change the restrictions that were put in place or change any of the law from July of 2023 as it's written right now. Again, the top line number there, abortion limit is now 12 weeks in North Carolina. It used to be 20 prior to July of 2023. No indication that that the GA is set to change that. However, there's also no indication that the governor is going to have any interest in upholding this state law, which was duly enacted and is in effect. So we'll continue to track this as we watch this relationship play out between the newly elected governor and Josh Stein and the Republican-led North Carolina General Assembly. We'll keep a close eye on it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Keeping our attention on Governor Stein, just getting a letter in this morning that Josh Stein has sent to FEMA and to FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, specifically dealing with what we were talking about earlier this morning with Teresa Opeka from CarolinaJournal.com. I want to read through the letter for you this morning. It's dealing with temporary housing. Stein's letter reads, quote, "As you know, the people of Western North Carolina have faced incredible tragedy and hardship due to Hurricane Helene. I know FEMA has been working to deliver aid, but the people of Western North Carolina are experiencing chaos and uncertainty regarding temporary housing that is untenable. Many of these families' homes need long-term rebuilding and are not and will not be safe for some time. I write today to ask you to extend the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program, or TSA as it's known, to eligible North Carolinians for an additional 6 months through September the 30th of 2025, so that these folks have certainty that they will have a safe place to live until their home is safe and habitable. People in the mountains of North Carolina are facing below freezing temperatures, and next week our state will experience another cold snap that may bring more winter weather. I know that you agree that people are entitled to pass the winter safely and securely as they rebuild their damaged or destroyed homes. The shock of the damage Hurricane Helene caused is still very real for the people of Western North Carolina. They need assurances that they will have shelter during this time so long as their home is still uninhabitable. We owe them support, not fear or confusion. My goal is to work together with all local, state, and federal partners, including FEMA, because the people of Western North Carolina need help and they need it now. We must come together for the good of our people. I appreciate your consideration of my request to extend TSA authorization for an additional 6 months. I look forward to hearing from you as soon as possible, as time is of the essence. Sincerely, Governor Josh Stein." So that just heading over to floating around on social media this morning, this letter from Josh Stein dealing with FEMA, dealing with the TSA program, as individuals have essentially been in limbo over the last couple of weeks as the date and times have continued to shift for individuals that are staying in various hotel and motels across the state as they await for permanent construction or permanent rehabilitation of their homes out in Western North Carolina. It's been quite a mess, and it's good to see Josh Stein is calling on this set in stone 6-month date from FEMA. We'll continue to track those details, and you can read more on that story and the whole process that we were talking about earlier this morning with Teresa Opeka by visiting our website, CarolinaJournal.com, where it's now 5:43, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get another look at traffic this morning. We'll get an update from the great Boomer Von Cannon.
Come on, thanks. Hot, Nick.
It's 5:50. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Friday morning to you. Turning our attention back to Washington, D.C. this morning, a lot of news that we're tracking over at carolinajournal.com. The U.S. House passed a bill yesterday with bipartisan support to deport or deny U.S. entry to illegal aliens who are convicted sex offenders or other crimes involving domestic violence, stalking, child abuse, or neglect. The Preventing Voices Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act was introduced by Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina yesterday. She pointed to ICE data that shows nearly 650,000 illegal aliens on the non-detained docket are convicted criminals freely roaming our streets across America. Mace said yesterday, quote, "These criminal illegal aliens freely roam our streets and communities, committing senseless acts of violence against American women and children. My bill makes it very clear that if an illegal alien commits a sex crime or an act of domestic violence, they are inadmissible and are deported," said Mace. "We aren't letting you into our country, and if you're already here, we are sending you back to yours." Some very strong wording there from the Congresswoman from South Carolina. The bill passed in a strong bipartisan manner, 274 to 145, with 61 Democrats going across the aisle and voting with all Republicans in the House in support. From North Carolina's delegation, Representative Don Davis, who serves in North Carolina District 1, which is really our only toss-up a close political district in the state, joined all Republican colleagues in supporting the bill, but the state's three other Democrat representatives remained in opposition to that. So you had, again, those all those Republicans voting in favor, including Don Davis. But as we look at the list of the Democrats that voted against it, that includes Representative Adams, who voted against it, and Representative Fauci voting against it, as well as Representative Ross. So those three no votes from North Carolina. The 145 Democrats who voted against the act were slammed online by prominent officials, including voices like Elon Musk, for not supporting the removal of illegal immigrants who he claimed are from these nations that have committed these terrible acts. When the bill previously passed the House in the 2024 session under the 118th Congress, 158 Democrats voted against it. Speaking on the House floor before the vote, Representative Mark Harris from North Carolina said the act shouldn't be controversial. However, he said Democrats will use any excuse to oppose common sense border security. He said common sense dictates if an illegal alien is in our country and they commit a sex offense or domestic violence, they should be deported immediately. Common sense dictates if an alien is at the border and they've committed these kinds of egregious crimes in their past, they should not be allowed to take a step onto American soil. Anything short of this standard is a complete and utter failure to protect American women and girls. This bill before us today ensures just that. Earlier this week, Representative Don Davis was the only member of the U.S. House, as we talked about, the only member to vote present on legislation passed Tuesday that would require school sports to recognize a student's sex based solely on their physical biology. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has said Republicans intend to quickly pass border security legislation, preparing President-elect Donald Trump for various actions on his first day in office. That, of course, will be in the afternoon hours coming up on Monday. Trump is set to take his oath of office around noon or so, and from what we are hearing from some rumblings up in Washington, D.C., it is expected to be very quick that the Trump administration gets to work. We'll continue to track that right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. In some other news out of D.C. this morning, U.S. Representative David Rouzer, who serves the 7th Congressional District, that includes portions of Wilmington, has been appointed the chairman of the Subcommittee on Railroads, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials, which is part of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. It's known as T&I. Rouser said in a statement yesterday, having served on the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure since I was elected to Congress, I understand the importance of the subcommittee on railroads, pipelines, and hazardous material that it has in shaping the integral and future of our nation's transportation and supply chain systems. As the committee addresses surface transportation reauthorization, I am eager to begin working with Chairman Graves and my colleagues to bolster our nation's rail and pipeline infrastructure to improve safety, our energy security, and strengthen America's economy. The subcommittee oversees economic safety and regulations of railroads, as well as pipeline safety and transportation of some of that material that could be deemed hazardous. It also has authority over the agency's responsibility for these regulations. Key agencies under its jurisdiction include Amtrak, the Federal Railroad Administration, the Surface Transportation Board, as well as the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. The overseeing T&I committee is chaired by Representative Sam Graves from Missouri. On December the 12th, the Republican Steering Committee tapped Graves to continue as the chairman in the 119th Congress, according to a recent press release from them. So as we turn into the 119th Congress, as work continues over there, and, of course, as President Trump is expected to be in that office on Monday, we are seeing some prominent North Carolina lawmakers, including, as we talked about earlier this week, Representative Virginia Foxx leading the Rules Committee, Congressman David Rouser now chairing this group in the very influential Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Some big-time shoes for North Carolina lawmakers to fill and to support in. We'll continue to track those details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. That's going to do it for a Friday edition of the program. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT as they're live from the Union County Crime Stoppers barbecue event. We're back Monday morning 5 to 6 right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.